atmospheric jail that traps the worst cold. South to the central and eastern United States, more often in recent times, scientists say. Why is it so cold? Well, super cold air is normally locked up in the Arctic in a polar vortex, which is a gigantic circular weather pattern around the North Pole. A strong polar vortex keeps that cold air hemmed in. Then, when it weakens, it causes, like a dam, to burst, and the cold air heads south, said Judah Cohen, a winter storm expert for atmospheric environmental research, a commercial firm outside Boston. This is not record-breaking for Canada or Alaska or northern Siberia. It's just misplaced, said Cohen, who had forecast a colder than normal winter for much of the US. Is this unusual? Yes, but more for how long, about 10 days. The cold has lasted than how cold it has been. More than 1,600 daily records for cold were tied or broken in the last week of December, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Far fewer all-time records were set. In other words, the minus 20 degrees in Omaha on January the 1st was the coldest New Year's Day since record keeping began in 1871. But that didn't come near Omaha's all-time record low of minus 32 set January the 5th of 1885, according to the National Weather Service. For Greg Carbon of the Weather Service's Weather Prediction Center, the most meaningful statistic is the average temperature during the cold streak. In Nebraska, for example, Hastings, Lincoln, and Grand Island had their coldest final week of December since record-keeping began in the late 1800s. Omaha, with only one daily temperature record that week, still managed to notch its third coldest final week of the year. And remember, Omaha's records go back to 1871. Is it just the US? Pretty much. While the continental United States has been in the deep freeze, the rest of the globe has been toastier than normal. The globe as a whole was 0.9 degrees warmer than normal Tuesday, and the Arctic was more than 6 degrees warmer than normal, according to the University of Maine Climate Change Institute. What's the latest? Tallahassee got its first measurable snow in nearly 3 decades on Wednesday. The snow brought a childlike joy and wonder and loud whoops from longtime residents who rarely see the white stuff. Much of the southeast Atlantic coast got a wintry mix of snow and freezing rain as the storm headed north. The number of deaths linked to the relentless cold across much of the United States has risen to 17. The latest were in Texas, Mississippi, and Michigan. What's next? The Weather Service says an intense storm embedded in the system is expected to intensify so rapidly that it will qualify as a bomb cyclone. That's one where the pressure at the center of a storm drops very rapidly. The storm should dump at least 8 inches of snow today on Boston, where some flights are already cancelled, and at least 6 inches on New York City. Still, meteorologists say most of the storm's fierce hurricane force winds should stay out to sea until it nears Canada. Meteorologists say that perhaps the worst effects could be bitter sub-zero cold on the East Coast. For the Northeast, this weekend might be the coldest of the coldest with the storm, said Jason Furtado, a University of Oklahoma meteorology professor. We could be ending the cold snap with a big hurrah. What makes the polar vortex move? This is an area of hot debate and research among scientists, and probably is a mix of human-caused climate change and natural variability, Furtado said. Climate change hasn't made the polar vortex more extreme, but research indicates that global warming is allowing Arctic air to make more prolonged, deep dives into the US. That vein of research also indicates a possible connection between stalled weather systems at other times of the year. Global warming could be responsible for stuck spring and summertime weather patterns in which flooding, rains, or searing drought takes hold. How can it be so cold with global warming? Arctic air is still bitterly cold, so atmospheric changes that allow that air to drop south will continue to lead to such sharp temperature drops. And don't confuse weather, which occurs over a few days or weeks at a regional level, with climate, which spans over years and defines a region's habitability. Weather is like a person's mood, which changes frequently, while climate is like someone's personality, which is more long-term, Furtado said. A few cold days doesn't disprove climate change. That's just silly. Just like a couple of down days on the stock market doesn't mean the economy is going into the trash. Over to you, Bill.
From the White House, Trump blasts Bannon and the book. President disavows former aide after unflattering excerpts from Washington. President Donald Trump launched a scathing attack on former top advisor Steve Bannon on Wednesday, responding to a new book that portrays Trump as an undisciplined man-child who didn't actually want to win the White House and quotes Bannon as calling his son's contact with a Russian lawyer treasonous. Hitting back via a formal White House statement rather than a more typical Twitter volley, Trump insisted that Bannon had little to do with his victorious campaign and has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind, Trump said. It was a blistering attack against the man who helped deliver the presidency to Trump. It was spurred by an unflattering new book by writer Michael Wolff, Wolff, that paints Trump as a leader who doesn't understand the weight of the presidency and spends his evenings eating cheeseburgers in bed, watching TV to old friends. White House aides were blindsided when early excerpts from Fire and Fury inside the Trump White House were published online by the New York Magazine and other media outlets ahead of the January 9th publication date. The release left Trump furious and disgusted, said White House spokeswoman Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who complained that the book contained outrageous and completely false claims against the president, his administration, and his family. Asked what specifically had prompted the president's fury with Bannon, she said, "I would certainly think that going after the president's son in an absolutely outrageous and unprecedented way is probably not the best way to curry favor with anybody." In the book, Bannon is quoted as describing a June 2016 meeting at the Trump Tower between Donald Trump Jr., Trump campaign aides, and a Russian lawyer as treasonous and unpatriotic. The meeting has become a focus of federal and congressional investigators. Bannon also told Wolff the investigation into a potential collusion between Russia and Trump campaign officials would likely focus on money laundering. "They're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national TV," Bannon was quoted as saying in one section that was reported by The Guardian. Trump Jr. lashed out in a series of tweets, including one that said Andrew Breitbart, the founder of the Breitbart News site that Bannon now runs, would be ashamed of the division and lies Steve Bannon is spreading. Bannon, who was forced out of the White House last summer, was not surprised or bothered by the blowback, according to personal friends, with his thinking but not authorized to speak publicly on the matter. That person, said Bannon, vowed on Wednesday to continue his war on the Republican establishment and also predicted that after a cooling off period, he'd continue to speak with Trump, who likes to maintain contact with former advisors even after he sometimes disparages them. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And in international news, a widening budget gap forces the UN to slash refugee food aid. Mel Khadida refugee camp in Ethiopia. 8 years ago, Khadija Abdi fled from the fighting and chaos in Somalia that killed her father and brother and made it across the border to a refugee camp in southern Ethiopia. "Life isn't so bad here," she says. "Tents have gradually been replaced by huts. She is safe and her daughter goes to school. The problem? There's not enough food. Last year, monthly rations were cut 3 times, said Abdi 40. Beset by funding shortages, the UN World Food Programme has reduced the daily caloric intake for the 650,000 refugees it feeds in Ethiopian camps by 20%, leaving them with an average allowance of just 1680 calories a day. Meanwhile, nearly 10,000 new refugees, mostly from war-torn South Sudan, arrive every day. The problem is not restricted to Ethiopia. The operations of the agency, by far the world's biggest food provider, are under threat as global crises overwhelm donor countries' capacity to give. Nor is it mainly a matter of donor fatigue. The Trump administration may have threatened to cut back on humanitarian aid, but 2017 saw the most US funding ever for the food program, $2.4 billion, up from $2 billion in 2016, according to Peter Smerdon, the program's spokesman for East Africa. It's the huge demands that have outstripped donors' ability to keep increasing funding, Smerdon said. With near famines in South Sudan, Yemen, Nigeria, and Somalia, as well as a string of protracted conflicts and refugee crises in places such as Syria and Ethiopia, the need is simply too great. In 2016, the program needed $8.84 billion and received $5.92 billion, including the United States' $2 billion. A year later, The need rose to $9.6 billion, but funding was just $5.96 billion. There is no reason to expect this year's needs to shrink as conflicts continue unabated. The donors are giving more, but I'm concerned and worried that this cannot continue, Snowden said. It's only development that's going to fix the problem. We are just the Band-Aid. A Band-Aid, however, that is everywhere. The food program funding cuts would affect a staggering number of people. So far in Ethiopia, in contrast, there has been no pressure from the government to repatriate Somalis. There's a glimmer of hope, at least for those in Ethiopia, where the government pledged to boost ties between the refugees and the host communities and help them initiate their own income-generating activities, including partnership ventures. One of the most ambitious projects involves taking 24,700 acres of land donated by the Ethiopian government and irrigating it, letting refugees and locals farm it. The project, already underway, could ultimately sustain much of the drought-stricken area's population. For now, there are many mouths to feed. When you have the same pot of money to support a growing number, it just means everyone's going to get less, said Leila Boas, the food program's Ethiopia spokeswoman. The fact of the matter is, refugees just keep coming in. Back to you, Bill.
From the Journal Star, Legislature 2018, starting on positive note, there's much less tension this year as session gets underway. Nebraska's legislative session started Wednesday with considerably less tension than some might have expected based on 2017. A year ago, observers labeled the start of the session as unprecedented in its nearly sweeping election of conservative Republicans and 3 first-year senators to committee chairmanships. The start of the 2018 session was more business as usual. Only one panel, the Select Committee on Committees, got a new chairman, and Omaha Senator Robert Hilkeman is considered a more independent-minded lawmaker. The day began with hugs, wishes of Happy New Year, and even a politician kissing a baby, albeit his own. Senator Matt Williams of Gothenburg, who led the opening prayer, told senators that Wednesday was the 9th day of Christmas, leading to the Epiphany on Saturday. And my prayer for each of you today is that we think about the epiphanies that we can have, the expectations, the preparation, the hope, and ask ourselves each as we pray today, are we ready, Williams said. A few families gathered with members, most notable that of Omaha Senator Teresa Thibodeau, who at Governor Pete Ricketts' request replaced Joni Craighead, who resigned abruptly in September, and the baby who was kissed, Natalia, daughter of Senator John Moranti and wife Melissa. Thibodeau said she was excited and a little nervous on her first day as senator. She has busy months ahead, spending weekdays with the legislature and weekends in Omaha, campaigning for her seat, which is up for election this year. Oopsie, come on now. When senators settled down to business Wednesday, they elected Hilkeman to the 13-member group that assigns senators to committees and oversees their functioning. Hilkeman achieved the chairmanship on a 25-24 vote over Senator Steve Halloran of Hastings, a more conservative Republican. By adjournment at about noon, senators had introduced 119 bills and 7 resolutions, one of those to congratulate the Husker volleyball team for its 2017 national championship. The legislature easily adopted temporary rules, and Speaker Jim Scheer of Norfolk did not have to caution, as he did a year ago, that he cannot nor will not be intimidated by anyone or any group. Instead, he talked about how the coming weeks will proceed, with Ricketts' State of the State address January 10th and bill hearings beginning January 16th. Full day debate will begin February 28th. It is more than of a 50-day session than a 60-day session, he reminded senators. I welcome everyone back, he said. It's nice to start on a positive note. I'm looking forward to great things. I may not be more optimistic than most. I think we'll just have a great session. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And from the US Senate, President Grassley, far-fetched, but possible. By this time next year, an Iowan could hold a Senate position, putting him third in the line of succession to the presidency. But Senator Chuck Grassley probably shouldn't let that go to his head. The chief qualifications for the position, after all, are time served and belonging to the majority party, and the role is largely ceremonial. It's a pretty weak position, said Stephen Smith, professor of political science at Washington University in St. Louis. The Constitution requires the Senate to elect a president pro tempore. For many years, the title has typically gone to the longest-serving member of the party in control. Having served in the Senate since 1981, Grassley has more seniority than all but two of his Republican colleagues, Utah's Orrin Hatch and Mississippi's Thad Cochran. Hatch just announced that he won't seek re-election this year, so he won't be returning in 2019. And Cochran has struggled with health problems that could prompt him to step down in the near future. In an interview with the World Herald, Grassley said he hasn't given the prospect of serving as pro tem much thought, and that he's working off the assumption that Cochran will stick around. He also noted that Republicans hold a slim majority that could flip as a result of the upcoming November midterm elections. I think about it now when it's 51 to 49, Grassley said. It could be 51 to 49 with the Democrats in control. Grassley would be the first Iowan to hold the job since Senator Albert Cummins, who served as pro tem from 1919 to 1925. The job does involve a few perks, including a salary bump from $174,000 to $193,400. It also comes with an office in the Capitol and a small security detail. And it's arguably a privilege to hold a title specified in the Constitution, but it doesn't come with the kind of raw legislative or political power that a position such as the Majority Leader entails. The position has never been given a significant role in Senate governance, Smith said of the pro tem. The constitutional duties involve presiding over the Senate in the absence of the Vice President, but that duty is typically delegated to junior members on a day-to-day basis, and the Vice President often takes the presiding chair only for truly historic votes. The other big responsibility is to serve in the line of succession, behind the Vice President and the House Speaker, but the country has never had to go beyond the Vice President, so it's unlikely Grassley would ever be called upon to fulfill that role. Hatch's department also will free up the chairmanship of the Senate Finance Committee, which Grassley could have claimed next year if he wanted to give up the gavel of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Grassley said his committee decisions would be influenced in part by whether Congress is tackling additional tax legislation or overhauling entitlement programs, areas that fall under the Finance Committee's jurisdiction. But Grassley also suggested that he has items left on his to-do list for the Judiciary Committee, such as a balanced budget constitutional amendment. And he reiterated that future decisions will be influenced by whether the GOP remains a majority party. I'm not going to worry about anything until I find out whether I'm a minority member, Grassley said. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Lindsay. Manafort sues Mueller Justice Department over Russia probe. From Washington, President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman sued special counsel Robert Mueller and the Justice Department on Wednesday, saying prosecutors had overstepped their bounds by charging him for conduct that he says is unrelated to Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. The lawsuit by Paul Manafort, filed in federal court in Washington, is the most direct challenge to date to Mueller's legal authority and the scope of his mandate as special counsel. It comes amid Republican allegations of partisan bias among members of Mueller's team, which for months has been investigating whether the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia to influence the outcome of the U.S. election. The lawsuit also takes aim at Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who is overseeing Mueller's investigation, and recently said he was satisfied that the former FBI director was staying within the scope of his authority. Manafort was indicted in October on charges including money laundering conspiracy related to his lobbying work on behalf of a Russia-friendly Ukrainian political party. He has pleaded not guilty. He is one of 4 Trump associates, including former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, to be charged so far in Mueller's investigation. In his complaint, Manafort alleges that the investigation into decade-old business dealings is completely unmoored from the mandate Mueller was given when he was named in May to probe possible ties between the Kremlin and the Trump campaign. He argues that a paragraph in Rosenstein's order appointing Mueller, which allows him to pursue new matters he comes across during his investigation, is too broad to be permitted under the regulation that governs special counsels. The lawsuit asks a judge to set aside all actions brought against Manafort by the special counsel's office and to issue an order narrowing the scope of Mueller's investigation to only matters explicitly laid out in the appointment order. The complaint also alleges that Rosenstein's order was overly broad and arbitrary. The time is 10:21. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And in local news, Chris targets prison overcrowding with 3 bills. From Lincoln, citing little progress in reducing state prison overcrowding, State Senator Bob Christ of Omaha introduced a trio of bills Wednesday to accelerate the process. One, Legislative Bill 675, would move up the deadline for mandating an overcrowding emergency by 2 years to July the 1st to force the release of parole-eligible inmates to reduce prison populations. Christ, who is mounting a third-party run for governor, said that Governor Pete Ricketts' administration needs to do more to reduce overcrowding. Right now, state law calls for an overcrowding emergency to be automatically enacted in July 2020 if the state's prison populations are above 140% of capacity. It would require the release of parole-eligible inmates deemed to be good risks until the population fell to 125% of capacity. But Chris said that lawmakers who have been studying the multiple problems in the state prison system for several years are better equipped now to think outside the box and address overcrowding issues rather than wait. Overcrowding has plagued Nebraska's prison system for a decade. State prisons on Wednesday held 5,197 inmates, which is about 155% of design capacity. Nebraska has the second most overcrowded prison system in the country, and the problem prompted a lawsuit by the ACLU of Nebraska last year. Ricketts said corrections officials have said that efforts to reduce prison overcrowding are working more slowly than projected, but is still expected to reduce prison population to 140% by July 2020. The governor has also said that forced releases risk public safety. Preet Senator Laura Ebke, who led a prison oversight committee that looked at prison issues last year, said it is an issue that warrants discussion now. It's also worthwhile, Ebke said, to keep pushing the State Board of Parole to articulate a plan on how an emergency would play out. Chris said that his LB 676 would allow more than 400 inmates who have been denied parole release because they have not received required rehabilitation programs to take part in such programs while on parole. He said that releasing terminally ill or permanently incapacitated inmates to medical facilities, as proposed in LB 672, would allow the state to access federal funds for their care, while also reducing overcrowding. Among other bills introduced Wednesday, sunscreen. Children attending schools, recreational programs, summer camps, and daycare programs would be allowed to use sunscreen under LB 688, introduced by Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue. She said the measure is part of a national campaign to protect children's skin. She said she's found that schools generally do not allow children to have sunscreen with them. Another one, airbags. Selling or installing bad airbags in a vehicle would become a criminal offense under LB 690, introduced by Blood. The bill targets counterfeit airbags which are not dealer authorized and airbags known to not work properly. Blood said people can find such airbags online and buy them in hopes of saving money without realizing that the devices may not work. Another one is seatbelts. Senator Roy Baker of Lincoln introduced LB 711, which says no driver can operate a vehicle unless the driver and all passengers are wearing fastened seatbelts. Currently, seatbelts are required only of the driver and front seat occupant. LB 671, introduced by Christ, would allow law enforcement to stop people for not wearing a seatbelt or texting while driving. Under current law, people can only be ticketed for those violations if stopped for other reasons. Another one is drug testing. Individuals applying for or receiving unemployment benefits could be drug tested under LB 712, introduced by Senator Joni Albrecht of Thurston. The drug test could be required if an individual was fired from a job because of illegal drug use. Failing a drug test would make the person ineligible for benefits until the drug test is successfully passed. Legislative vacancies. The governor would have to pick from a pool of applicants when a vacancy occurs in the legislature under LB 777, introduced by Senator Sarah Howard of Omaha. Ricketts has filled past vacancies in the legislature by picking people who did not apply for the positions. And Bottle Club. Although alcohol is not sold at bottle clubs, patrons bring their own liquor. The clubs would be required to obtain the same licenses as bars and taverns under LB 747, introduced by Senator Teresa Thibodeau of Omaha. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you. The Odd Couple at Maggie's. This is from the Journal Star, and it's Cindy Langkubik's column. It started with muffins. I ate my way through Maggie's peanut butter bar years ago and her dive into donuts. I sampled the falafel wrap and the roasted veggie melt. I dabbled in frittatas and black bean casseroles, devoured nut meat tacos, veggie pizzas drizzled with balsamic, homemade soups and tofu salads and chocolate chip cookies. But most of the time, I favored the 3-cheese wrap, a gooey mess of goodness served on a brightly colored plastic plate, garnished with a swirl of roasted red pepper dressing. Restaurants come and restaurants go, and I've mourned many of them in my time. And now, after 17 years of wholesome and heavenly local food prepared in a tiny kitchen in the Haymarket, the end of Maggie's Vegetarian Cafe. So many memories are wrapped up in the eateries I've loved and lost, their associations to time and place and people nearly overshadowing the meals they serve. Kuhl's, Kuhls, downtown, where I slid in the vinyl booths for breakfast with my granny and Popo. The Legion Club, where I danced with my dad. Lang family birthday outings at the Underground, flaming baked Alaskas arriving at our table like fireworks in September. Bay, for working mom lunches with my friend Lynn, and Maggie's for cribbage. Since 2000, when a young restaurateur named Maggie Pleskach opened her doors, I walked 3 blocks from the newsroom to 8th floor to 8th Street nearly every week to meet my friend Stan Krause. My card-playing companion, who occasionally showed up in camel, was ready to go hunting after we finished our meat-free fare. We made an odd couple, the lifetime NRA member and the liberal columnist, the squirrel hunter and the squirrel lover. But we rarely argued politics or dietary habits, although when Stan would begin to gab about his latest recipe for the annual squirrel cook-off in Arkansas, or how poorly his stock portfolio performed during the Obama years, I'd shut my ears or pull out a post-2008 stock market graph. Instead of bickering, we played 4 games of cribbage between bites, relishing the plates in front of us, a mutual love of Maggie's food and card games binding us. We took turns footing the bill. We ate our cookies first. We sat at the square table against the wall under the photos of local farmers who supplied Maggie with her produce and cheese. We marked beginnings and endings at Maggie's, love and love lost, the birth of my 2 grandbabies, the growing up of his. We kept meeting when neither of us really felt like it. Stan worrying over his son's cancer or hobbling with a cane stricken by a new ailment, me stressed about deadlines. We took a hiatus the year Stan was hit by a speeding driver while he crossed 27th Street on his bicycle. When we resumed, he joked that his brain injury messed with his short-term memory so that we wouldn't know the difference if I told him it was his turn to pay every week. I never took the bait. I'm turning the page. Let's see here. We lunched through the seasons, welcomed by Maggie's friendly staff. I watched Stan's baby Lily turn into a teenager. He watched my kids leave home, graduate college, old enough for business cards and mortgages. We watched Maggie fall in love. We mourned when her husband, Pat Clinch, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we grieved for her when he died. Those last years, Maggie was busy raising their 2 girls, and we rarely saw her during our lunch hour dates. But when she popped in, it was like she'd never left the counter. The same Maggie, dedicated to feeding us, happy when we were happy. We were at our table the day the cafe celebrated 17 years and gave away free Maggie's t-shirts to its first 17 customers. Stan took his shirt on vacation and posed for photos, holding it all across the Southwest desert. The XL didn't quite cover his girth. Sorry, Stan. When Maggie announced she was closing shop, we tried for one last lunch, but we couldn't find a day that worked for both of us. That was bittersweet. But it seemed meant to be, too, that our last lunch, the cards and the camaraderie, the chocolate chip cookie appetizers, followed by Stan's soup and my melting cheese wrap, was unencumbered by emotion. Just good food with a good friend at a place we both loved for so long. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And in more news from the World Herald, the goal is to restore the North Oak Ballroom. The rundown former home of the Carnation Ballroom could once again become a flower in North Omaha's lapel. The vacant building at 2701 North 24th Street shows none of the luster of its mid-century glory days when it reportedly played host to such musical luminaries as Duke Ellington, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, and B.B. King. But an idealistic young real estate developer, Ben Swan, proposes to save the building so it can be restored and put back to use. Swan and the Historic Preservation Group, Restoration Exchange Omaha, took a step in that direction Wednesday. The Omaha Planning Board voted 6-1 to recommend that the Omaha City Council approve their request for local landmark status for the building. Swan said the designation would help them get the building redeveloped by raising its status in the public eye and by helping it toward being listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Such a listing could make a redeveloper eligible to apply for historic tax credits. A former bakery, auto repair shop, and social club, the Carnation Ballroom operated from 1948 to 1959 as a music venue and center of community life. Mildred Brown, founder of the Omaha Star newspaper, leased the building and ran the business. From the time Mrs. Brown began operating the renovated ballroom until the late 1950s, the Carnation was the main center of musical and social activities on Omaha's near north side, musician Preston Love, who also played at the ballroom, wrote in the World Herald in 1994. The vast majority of the musicians who performed at the Carnation were Black. That not only gave Black Omahans a place to see the performers, it gave Black musicians somewhere to perform at a time when racial segregation limited where they could work, according to the landmark designation application. Swan bought the building about a year ago. He said his purpose was to save the building and to see it return to the community in an authentic way. It is structurally sound, he said, but it will cost about $800,000 to restore it. Swan said a buyer with an authentic cultural connection to North Omaha has signed a contract to buy the building and wants to put a mix of commercial uses in it. Swan declined to reveal the person's name. He said the buyer has the capital to restore the building. They would meticulously restore and renovate the building, he said. They have a history of doing that. Planning Board Chairman Arnold Nesbitt, who cast the lone vote against the designation, said he didn't buy the argument. He said the building had no architectural significance, and he wasn't convinced by the case for historic and cultural significance. I don't see any African-American people behind you suggesting that what you said is what they need, Nesbitt said. Christine Gerber, Executive Director of Restoration Exchange Omaha, said City Councilman Ben Gray, Willie Barney, and other African-American leaders supported the landmark designation. The City Planning Department supported the landmark designation, which would prevent the building from being torn down. Planning Board member David Rosacker, noting that he's a music fan, said the building meets the criteria of a local landmark on the grounds of cultural and historic significance. In the building industry, I've seen a lot of sow's ears turned into silk purses, Rosacker said. Also Wednesday, the Planning Board voted to approve a conditional use permit that would allow the Irvington Volunteer Fire Department to build a fire station northeast of 72nd Street and Northern Hills Drive. It would be the department's second station. The fire department had received a similar permit in 2010, but it expired. Department representatives said they're still raising money for the project. They said they need the station to provide quicker responses in the northern part of their fire district. The approval came with the conditions that the fire department didn't like, though. The Planning Board agreed with member Mike Pate's amendments requiring that the fire station be built before a planned pavilion for department picnics and other social events, and also that the pavilion be built outside the runway protection zone of the North Omaha Airport. Back to you, Bill.
From the Journal-Star, Trump disbands voter fraud panel. From Washington, President Donald Trump has signed an executive order disbanding his voter fraud commission. A White House statement Wednesday blamed the decision on numerous states' refusal to provide voter information to the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. Trump had asked the Department of Homeland Security to determine the administration's next steps. Critics saw the commission as part of a conservative campaign to strip minority voters and poor people from the voter rolls and to justify unfounded claims made by Trump that voter fraud cost him the popular vote in 2016. Past studies have found voter fraud to be exceptionally rare. And briefly, Cuomo, New York State, will take Washington to court to challenge the new Republican tax overhaul. Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo said Wednesday, calling the new law an unconstitutional assault on states' rights. The lawsuit is one of several ways Cuomo, a potential 2020 presidential contender, is positioning New York to lead the opposition to President Donald Trump and congressional Republicans. And a European storm, a violent storm, packed winds up to 100 miles per hour, battered parts of Western Europe on Wednesday, derailing trains, toppling trees, and halting flights, and finally, first Americans' DNA from an infant who died in Alaska some 11,500 years ago is giving scientists the best look yet at the genetics of the ancestors of today's native peoples of the Americas, according to a paper released Wednesday by the journal Nature.
Thanks, Bill. And from the more in the Midland section, Good Samaritans on Christmas Eve gave a sick eagle a chance to live. She's being called the Christmas Eve eagle. A sick, bald eagle found along a rural Nebraska road on Christmas Eve stands a chance at survival thanks to a pair of sheriff's deputies and others who helped the bird on that frigid night. It's now being treated at the Fontanelle Forest Raptor Recovery Center near Elmwood. Denise Lewis, interim director of the Raptor Recovery Program, said the bird is suffering from lead poisoning. She said raptors sometimes ingest lead pellets when eating a dead animal that has been shot by a hunter. Lewis said the eagle is being treated with a medication to reduce the extremely high lead levels found in its blood. She's hopeful the bird will survive, but it's too early to say for certain. She said she's grateful to those who helped the eagle. It was wonderful, she said, especially on Christmas Eve. I spotted the 11-pound bird lying on the snow near Richland, about 80 miles west of Omaha. Motorist Chase Lovell of Columbus contacted the Colfax County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Tony Hemmer and Deputy Brett Strubing responded to the call. Hemmer said he and the deputy stayed with the bird for nearly 2 hours until a volunteer from the Fontanelle Forest Raptor Group arrived. Hemmer said he and the deputy wanted to protect the fallen eagle from coyotes that prowl the area. Chad Witt, the volunteer with the Raptor Group, drove more than an hour from his Elkhorn area home with his teenage son Dylan to pick up the bird. Witt said the eagle wasn't moving, and they couldn't even stand when he lifted the bird from the snow. Witt said he and his son didn't mind giving up their Christmas Eve. It's a good feeling to be able to go out and help these birds, he said. And then, witty words wanted for interstate signs. The Nebraska Department of Transportation wants your wit and wisdom on display. Officials are looking for catchy, creative, and witty Friday safety messages to display on their electronic message boards along Nebraska's interstate system. The messages are posted on Fridays, officials said, and the more creative, the better. Previous electronic messages over the past year or so have included join the rebellion against distracted driving and be a good potato, keep your eyes on the road. A new safety message is posted every Friday at 12:01 a.m. and is displayed for 24 hours, officials said. Submissions are being accepted through January the 31st. Messages should be 3 lines of text with a maximum 18 characters per line. Spaces count. The messages will be evaluated to conform to regulations and edited for clarity. Submit ideas at http://.nebraska.gov/news.
Thank you,
to you, Bill.
Lindsay. The time is 10:39, and Lindsay has a bunch of deaths and funerals in the Omaha World Herald, and I have quite a number myself. So here are the deaths and funerals from the Lincoln Journal-Star. First is Patton, John S. Patton, age 56, passed away December 26th. A celebration of John's life will be held at 6 p.m. Friday, January 5th at Lincoln Firefighters Reception Hall. Snethan, Martha Snethan of Falls City, born December 1920, passed away January 2nd, age 98. Smith, Terry Smith, born April 1965, passed away January 3rd, age 53. Teresa Ellie Cross, age 74 of Lincoln, passed away January 3rd. That'll be Bethuras Mazer and Love Funeral Home, and memorials to the Norris District 160 T. Ellie Cross Scholarship Fund of Sadie Dog Friend Fund. Let's see. Germer, Germer, Eldora E. Germer, age 84, and that is Peace Methodist Church in Plymouth, Nebraska. Churchill, Bruce F. Churchill, age 78 of Swanton, passed away January 1st, Kunkel Funeral Home, Welger. Pratt, Richard R. Pratt, age 89 of Elmwood, passed away December 31st. Memorials are suggested at the St. Paul United Methodist Church in Elmwood. Schindler, Robert L., they called him Bob Schindler, age 76, passed away December 31st. That will be Roper and Sons Chapel, and memorials in lieu of flowers may be given to the Shrine Hospital for Children. Fowler, William E. Fowler of Lincoln, born June 1942, passed away January 1st, age 76. Devall, D-E-V-A-L-L, Geraldine Deval, born October 1932, passed away December 26th, age 86. Catherine Ann Catlin of Lincoln, born June 1960, passed away December 29th, age 58. Allie, Diana L. Alley of Lincoln, born August 1962, passed away January 2nd, age 56. Holscher, born September 1922, passed away December 29th, age 95. And in lieu of flowers, please donate to hospice or the Alzheimer's Association. And her funeral mass will be held at 10 a.m. on Friday morning at St. Mary's in Lincoln. Lockard, Marilyn Ann Lockard, age 84, passed away December 31st. In lieu of flowers, please send memorials to St. Paul United Methodist Church. Donaldson, Evelyn Marie Donaldson, age 100, of Lawrence, Kansas, born October 1917, passed away December 23rd. Memorial contributions may be made in her name to the PEO Scholar Awards at PEO Executive Office. Attention, PEO Scholarship Awards. And arrangements are by Carpenter Breland Funeral Home. Berner, B-E-R-N-E-R, Dean J. Berner, age 95, of Syracuse, passed away December 30th. A memorial service, 2 p.m. Saturday, January 6th at the First Lutheran Church in Avoca. Trester, T-R-O-E-S-T-E-R, Donald Trester, age 92, of Aurora, passed away January 2nd. Higby McQuiston Mortuary is in charge. Elliott, Robert Dwayne Elliott, they called him Bob, of Greenwood, died December 31st. Memorials in care of the family for future designation. And the funeral service is at the American Lutheran Church in Ashland. Garrison, Francis H. Garrison, age 97, of Bruning, died January 2nd in Geneva. Memorials in lieu of flowers to the Lutheran World Hunger Appeal. Butchfink, B-U-C-H-F-I-N-C-K, Bonnie H. Butchfink, age 90, formerly of Lincoln, passed away December 13th in Sparks, Nevada, and that is Roper & Sons Funeral Home. And in lieu of flowers, a no-kill animal shelter or to a rescue organization. Leisenfeld, Brenda Williams Leisenfeld, age 78, of Lincoln, died December 28th. Lotharis Mazer and Love Funeral Home is handling, and the family suggests memorials to the National Stroke Association or the American Cancer Society. Vernon Owen Thompson, age 86, of Lincoln, memorials, 86 of Lincoln, yes. Memorials in Vern's name may be marked Scholarship Fund and directed to the Columbine Christian Church in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And a celebration of life will be held at the church on Saturday, January 20th at Piedmont Park, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Lincoln. Sivard Jr., Harold Eugene Sivard Jr., of Cedar Creek, born May 1957, passed away December 28th, age 61. Hamilton, Gary Hamilton, born July 1951, passed away January 1st, age 67. Clayton, Melba Jean Clayton, and that's Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. She passed away age 83. Cherney, C-E-R-N-Y, I hope that's right. Richard C., they called him Dick Cherney. Let's see. Interment, St. John's Cemetery in Weston. It doesn't show the funeral home. Lockard, Marilyn A. Lockard, age 84, of Lincoln, passed away December 31st, age 84, and that's Bethuras Mazer and Love for Funeral Home. Bauman, Patricia Ann Bauman, age 98, passed away December 30th. Farmer & Sons Funeral Home, Geneva, is handling. Schindler, Robert L. Schindler of Lincoln, born May 1941, passed away December 31st, age 77. Joachim, J-O-C-H-I-M. Gary Harold Joachim, age 65, of Lincoln, passed away December 16th, and that's Bethuras Mazer and Love Funeral Home. Kuhlman, K-U-H-L-M-A-N-N, Dorothea Kuhlman, of Tecumseh, born July 1925, passed away December 30th, age 93. Winkle, Joyce Winkle of Odell, passed away, born January 1923, passed away December 31st, age 95. Nespor, Joan Nespor of Fairbury, born November 1937, passed away January 1st, age 81. Ridenour, Marjorie Ann Ridenour, born July 1938, passed away January 1st, age 80. Pratt, Richard Pratt, age 89 of Elmwood, passed away December 31st, born February 1928. Services are pending at this time. And the last is Sharon, Rex M. Sharon, born August 1952, passed away January 1st, age 66. Brahmin Mortuary, Southwest Chapel of Omaha is listed. Those are the deaths and funerals in the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Thanks, Bill. And from the World Herald, Allen, Marcella B. Allen, aged 85. Born April the 28th, 1932, passed away December the 30th. Memorial service Friday, January the 5th at 10 a.m. at Forest Lawn Funeral House, home in Omaha. Church Road. Ayton, A-T-E-N, Judy T. Ayton, age 72. Born August the 29th, 1945, passed away January the 3rd. Complete notice later. Evie Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel, handling services. Baines, Therese Marie Baines, maiden name Bogarts, 60. Passed away peacefully on December the 28th. Funeral Saturday, January the 6th at 2 p.m. at Salem Lutheran Church, Fontanelle, Nebraska. Barner, Tricia J. Barner, B-A-R-N-E-R, age 49. Born July the 9th, 1968, passed away December the 31st, 2017. Visitation Friday, January the 5th from 1:30 to 3:30 at the West Center Chapel, followed by memorial service at 3:30. Memorials may be directed to the family. Evie Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel, handling services. Bates, Thelma L. Bates, aged 83. Passed away December the 8th. Services were held on December the 15th at Decker Funeral Home in Warminster, Pennsylvania. Bloyd, Carolyn J. Bloyd, age 72. Born December the 8th, 1945, passed away January the 2nd. Visitation Friday, January the 5th from 9 to 10 a.m. at LDS Papillion Stake Center. Memorial service to follow at 10 a.m. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the American Cancer Society. Bethany Funeral Home are handling services. Bush, Josephine A. Bush, age 99. Born July the 4th, 1918, passed away January the 1st. Services Friday, 10 a.m. at St. Bernard Catholic Church. Interment at the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery. Visitation Thursday, 5 to 7, with a wake service at 7 p.m. at John A. Gentleman, 72nd Street Chapel. Memorials to the family. Cantillo, Nada Cantillo, aged 82. Born May 9th, 1935, passed away January the 2nd. Funeral Friday, 10 a.m., St. Patrick's Catholic Church of Elkhorn. Change of location noted. Evie Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel are handling services. Christensen, Grant J. Christensen, age 54. Born November the 13th, 1963, passed away December the 31st. Mass of Christian burial, Thursday, January 4th at 10:30 a.m., St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church at 114th and Ford. Interment at Resurrection Cemetery. Memorials will be directed by the family. Evie Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel, handling services. Classen, C-L-A-S-S-E-N, Andrew A. Classen, called Drew, age 68. A veteran. Born February the 20th, 1949, passed away December the 31st. Funeral service Friday, 11 a.m. at the L Street Chapel. Flowers, in lieu of flowers, memorials may be made to the family for donation to Drew's favorite charities. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries, handling services. A family, Dalton, the Dalton family. Dalton, John Sr., named Jack, Dalton, Jean, and Dalton Philip, Leona. Passed away December the 26th. Mass of Christian burial on Friday, January the 5th at 11:15 a.m. at St. Cecilia Cathedral. Interment at Forest Lawn. Evie Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Dunn, Kevin Walsh Dunn, age 65. Passed away December the 30th. A rosary 10 a.m. and memorial mass 11 a.m. will be held in his honor Saturday, January the 6th at St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church on 7430 Haskell Street. An Irish celebration of life and interment will be held at a later date. Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home are handling services. Evans, David Ross Evans, age 74, a veteran, born October the 28th, 1943, passed away December the 31st. Celebration of life, 11 a.m. Saturday, January the 6th at Faithful Shepherd Presbytery Church, 2530 South 165th Avenue. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Faithful Shepherd Presbyterian Church of the Josie Harper Hospice Society in Omaha. Arbor Cremation Society is handling services. Everhart, Terry L. Everhart, age 61, born June 25th, 1956, passed away December the 28th, 2017. Memorial service 11 a.m. Friday, January the 5th at Stonebridge Christian Church, 15801 Butler Avenue. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is handling. Freeberg, Nadine F. Freeberg, aged 81, born August 15th, 1936, passed away January the 1st, 2018. Visitation Friday from 1 to 8 with family greeting friends from 6 to 8 at the family funeral home. Private family services will be held. Memorials may be directed to the family for future designation. Brian P. Harvey Funeral Home is handling services. Gonzalez, Sandra D. Gonzalez, age 58, born November the 15th, 1959, passed away December the 31st. Visitation Friday, June 5th, 5 to 7 with rosary at 7. Funeral service Saturday, January the 6th at 10 a.m. Burial to follow. All services at West Lawn Hillcrest. Graham, Walter B. Graham, age 94, born April the 16th, 1923, passed away January the 2nd. Complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel are handling services. Harris, Adrian C. Harris, age 47, born April the 9th, 1970, passed away December the 27th. Celebration of Life service will be held at 11 a.m. Monday, January the 8th, Forest Lawn. Hicks, Robert Nelson Hicks, age 92, born July the 5th, 1925, passed away January the 1st, 2018. Memorial service at 11 a.m. Rockbridge United Methodist Church, 9855 West Center Road. Private interment at Evergreen Memorial Park. Memorials to Rockbrook United Methodist Church or charity of your choice. Arbor Cremation Society is handling services. Hobley, Hobley, H-O-B-L-E-Y, Roy A. Hobley, aged 84. Born January the 4th, 1933, passed away December the 22nd. Memorial service Saturday, January the 6th, 10 a.m. West Center Chapel. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Hotz, Amelia J. Hotz, aged 88. Born September the 8th, 1929, passed away January the 3rd. Memorial service 10 a.m. Saturday at Rhoda Mortuary and lieu of flowers, memorials to the Nebraska Humane Society. Harry, Joyce Harry, aged 85. Born November 19th, 1932, passed away January the 1st. Celebration of Life, Saturday, January 6th, 1 p.m. at Eagles Eyrie 365 in Plattsmouth. Roby Funeral Home in Plattsmouth is handling services. Huffman, Barbara Jean Huffman, age 71. Born November 21st, 1946, passed away December 26th. Celebration of Life, 11 a.m. Saturday, January the 6th, also at Faith Christian Church. Bremen Mortuary is handling services. Jansen, Mary J. Jansen, aged 84. Born March 3rd, 1933, passed away December the 30th. Mass of Christian burial on Saturday, January the 26th at 10 a.m. at Mary R. Queen Catholic Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials to St. Jude's Hospital Research Hospital or Hospice House or Mary R. Queen Catholic Church. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Kalin, William Martin Kalin, aged 81. He was a veteran. Born October the 16th, 1936 in Coleridge. Passed away December the 25th. Memorial service 10 a.m. Friday, January the 5th at Seaver Sprig Funeral Home. A remembrance reception will be held immediately following the memorial service at the Fort Calhoun American Legion Post number 348. Memorial suggested to the Kalin family. Seaver Sprig Funeral Home. Knight, Richard L. Knight, aged 88. He was a veteran. Born November the 16th, 1929, passed away December the 15th. Memorial service Saturday, January the 6th, 11 a.m., Crosby Funeral Home. Court, Kohrt, Iona Joe Court, aged 87, born June 5th, 1930, passed away January the 2nd. Funeral service Friday, January the 5th, 2 p.m. at West Lawn, Hillcrest. Memorials may be directed to the food bank for the Heartland. Coolman, Gerald Coolman, Jerry Old Sergeant, Staff Master Sergeant, USA Air Force, retired, aged 84. He was obviously a veteran. Born October the 21st, 1933, passed away December the 26th. 10 a.m. Visitation, 10 a.m. Saturday, January 6th at Bellevue Memorial Chapel, followed by a graveside service. Military honors by Alfred Air Force Base Honor Guard. In lieu of flowers, memorials will be directed by the family for a Military Memorial Scholarship Fund. Bellevue Memorial Chapel is handling services. Lee, Dale F. Lee, age 93. Born September the 20th, 1924, passed away January the 2nd. Complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Mansky, Lois Mansky, maiden name Shively, age 79. Born April 12, 1938, passed away December the 26th. Memorial service will be 1:30 Friday, January the 5th, at the Douglas County Health Center Chapel. Date. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to the family. I do not see a funeral home listed. Marion, Mark Marion Jr., age 62, known as Scoopy. Passed away December the 28th. Funeral service 11 a.m. Friday, mortuary interment, Mount Hope Cemetery. Thomas Funeral Home is handling services. Mohat, Daniel B. Moat, age 60. Born May 26, 1957, passed away December the 31st. Memorial service Friday, January the 5th at 11 a.m. at the West Center Chapel, followed by private interment. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the Ollie Webb Center. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Mirante, Carolyn V. Mirante, age 95. Born June 22, 1922, passed away January the 1st. Mass of Christian burial Saturday, January 6, 10:30 a.m., St. Thomas More Catholic Church. Memorials are suggested to St. Thomas More Catholic Church and Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Altmans, Dwayne Keith Altmans, age 51. Born September the 30th, 1966, passed away December the 12th. Celebration of Dwayne's Heaven Day will be on Saturday, January the 6th at 11 a.m. at Lutheran Church of the Master. The family invites you to come and share the stories of how Dwayne blessed you. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel, handling services. Ortner, Dennis C. Ortner, age 70. He was a veteran. Born January the 11th, 1947, passed away December the 30th. Mass of Christian burial Thursday, January 4th at 10 a.m. at St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Graveside service on Thursday, 2 p.m., Omaha National Cemetery, military honors by the American Legion Post No. 1. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, handling services. Pelham, Patricia Pelham, P-E-L-L-H-U-M, aged 82. Born September the 16th, 1935, passed away January the 1st. Funeral Friday, 11 a.m., Glad Tidings Church. Memorials to the family for the charity of their choice. Carisco Larkins Daskowitz Funeral Home, handling services. Pratt, Richard R. Pratt, aged 89, a veteran. Passed away December the 31st, 2017. Graveside services Saturday, January the 6th at the Elmwood Cemetery at 10:30 a.m. Church services 11 a.m. at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Elmwood. Memorials are suggested to St. Paul United Methodist Church in Elmwood. Prohaska, Jerry Prohaska, age 77, from Elkhorn. Funeral Saturday, 10 a.m., all at the funeral home, West Lawn Hillcrest. Memorials to the family for later designation. Reichmuth Funeral Home is handling services. Reed, Betsy J. Reed, age 77, born October the 9th, 1940, passed away January the 2nd. Mass of Christian burial Saturday, January 6th, 10:30 a.m. at St. Robert Bellarmine Church. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel. And memorials to Deschen Academy, Institute for Priestly Formation, St. Robert Bellarmine Church, Creighton Prep, or Creighton University. Riley, Beverly J. Riley, age 90. Memorial visitation Thursday, 4 to 8, and family will receive friends that 6 to 8, all at Moses. Moses Memorial Chapel are handling services. Shellen, Janet E. Shellen, aged 82, from Elkhorn. Memorial service Saturday, 2 p.m. at the funeral home. Memorials to Bethany Lutheran Church. Reichmuth Funeral Home is handling services. Sephron, Kenny Sephron, age 60, born October the 4th, 1957, passed away December the 30th. Mass of Christian burial Thursday, January 4th at 11 a.m. at Our Lady of Lourdes Church. Heafy Hoppen Dvorak Cutler handling services. Smith, Jeffrey Harrison Smith, age 74, born February the 1st, 1943, passed away January the 1st, 2018. Memorial Mass Saturday, January 6th at 10:30 a.m. at St. Patrick Catholic Church in 20500 West Maple. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Creighton Prep High School, Josie Harper Hospice House, or Buffett Cancer Center. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Smock, Anne L. Smock, age 49, born January 4th, 1950, passed away January the 1st. Visitation Friday after 4 p.m. with memorial service 6 p.m. Crisco Larkin Staskowitz Chapel. Memorials will be directed by the family. Songster, David L. Songster, age 65. He was a veteran. Born August the 28th, 1952, passed away January the 2nd. Services Sunday, January 7th, 2 p.m. at Westside Church. Memorials to Fresh Start for All Nations. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel, handling services. Stavniak, Christine D. Stavniak, age 66, born May the 18th, 1951, passed away December the 31st. Mass of Christian burial Friday, January 5th at 10:30 a.m., Holy Cross Catholic Church. Memorials to the Stephen Center or the charity of your choice. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Storal, Stoural, Paul A. Storal, age 72, born March 4th, 1945, passed away January the 3rd. Complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Taylor, Sam Taylor, age 56, born March 1st, 1961, passed away December the 29th. Services Friday, January 5th, 10 a.m., Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Memorials to Preston Robert Tisch Brain Tumor Center at Duke Medical Center. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Thorpe, John S. Thorpe, age 66, born August the 26th, 1951, passed away January the 1st. Complete notice later. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries are handling services. Throckmorton, Aletha Throckmorton, known as Jean, age 97, born July the 16th, 1920, passed away January the 1st. Services Saturday, January 6th at 11 a.m. at First Christian Church in Panora, Iowa. Memorials to Nebraska Eastern Star. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Toddy, Clayton J. Toddy, age 38, born July 9th, 1979, passed away January the 3rd. Complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler handling services. Trummer, Harold M. Trummer, age 91. He was a veteran. Born November the 26th, 1926, passed away December the 30th. Memorial Mass Friday, January 5th at 10:30 with family receiving friends 1 hour prior to the service at St. Pius X Catholic Church. Bremen Mortuary is handling the services. Valdez, Mary Marcellus Valdez Sr., RSM, age 96, born September 14th, 1921, passed away January the 1st. Vigil service Thursday, 6:30 p.m. at Mercy Villa. Memorials to the Sisters of Mercy. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is handling. White, Lorna V. White, aged 88, born July the 3rd, 1929, passed away January the 1st, 2018. Memorial service following is 2 p.m. Saturday, January 6th at Mount View Presbyterian Church in Omaha. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be sent to Mount View Presbyterian Church. Whittler, Lonald W. Whittler, age 72. Memorial service 11 a.m. Friday, January 5th, United Church of Christ in Belvidere, Nebraska. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to the family for future designation. Brian P. Harvey Funeral Home. Workman, Lois E. Workman, age 79, born August the 28th, 1938, passed away January the 1st, 2018. Celebration of life to be held Saturday, January the 6th, from 1 to 3 p.m. No funeral home listed. Van Berg, John Charles or Jack Van Berg, aged 81, born June 7th, 1936, passed away December the 27th. Visitation is 9 to 12 p.m. Monday, January the 8th at Currith Hale Funeral Home Chapel. Funeral service will be 2 p.m. Monday, January 8th at Horner Hall in Hot Springs Convention Center. At Jack's request, please come dressed in your favorite jeans and cowboy boots, aka cowboy casual. And in lieu of flowers, a family requests that donations be made to the Humane Society of Garland County or the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. Carrot Funeral Home is handling services. And finally, Worthington, Rita Worthington, maiden name Anstey, aged 87. Born December the 14th, 1930, passed away December the 28th. Services at a later date. Memorial suggested to St. Timothy Catholic Church in Reno. Arbor Society is handling the services. And those are the...
Thank you. The time is 11:06. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. Lindsay and I will be back in just a few moments. We hope that you will be too. And here's Ryan.
Thank you very much, Bill.
So is it better to stop at 11 and let him do his bit and then continue, or just finish?
Yeah, we just finished.
Because one day that
happens all the time, really.
Okay.
Good morning for Thursday, January.
Well, the only other time it happened was when you went here. And so he just stopped at 11. And then he can take, because he was reading
brown rice
at the time. And then he stopped, and then we just picked up after.
Honey wheat bread.
Okay, so
margarine,
I just wanted to know the way you
chocolate
do
chip
it.
muffin,
And I really couldn't
1%
stop and ask you, because then that just takes up more time.
Reminder, you can hear the senior lunch menus every day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. right here.
It's kind of rare that we get that many. And I've turned out, I had a lot of them, and I didn't know it because there was about 5 per page.
Oh, usually you, yes, you, oh, I don't have that many. Whoopsie.
I think they used a different program to print it out.
Well, you say paper that way.
Yeah. Here is Jane Nielsen with another public service announcement.
All right.
Greetings, this is Jane with Radio Talking Book Service.
There's a lot of things I'd
Public
like to do
service
here.
announcement
but
from
like,
the Eastern
he's
Nebraska
accomplished
Office
many
on Aging.
things.
This is some
I don't
general
agree with most of the
information
things
about
he
the
does.
volunteer services that are available.
However, it
They
then
have
goes
an
on to talk about his,
ombudsman, and that word
the things
is a
he's messed up
Swedish
on.
word for
which he
advocate.
has.
So if you have someone that needs an advocate
But-
for someone 60 years and older, Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging would be a good place to go. You
Editorials.
can volunteer if you're 18 and older, and volunteers in the Ombudsman's office provide information to staff with the goal of improving the lives of residents. They also have the senior help section, which is like the Craigslist for seniors. When other Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging services are unable to provide assistance, the senior help tries to fill in the gap. RSVP is Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and this encourages people who are 55 and older to engage in their community. RSVP volunteers help at blood drives, hospital information desks, the SAC Museum, Habitat for Humanity's Restore, and other locations. The Senior Companion Program was started by President Johnson in 1965. Volunteers here help with adult daycare centers in the area, but they do not provide hands-on care. Some of the things companions do with their clients are share meals together, read mail, go shopping, take clients to hair or doctor appointments, provide respite care, and socialization within the community. There is also the Foster Grandparent Program. This program is similar to the Senior Companion Program, but it is in 6 public schools around the area. And just like it sounds, you are a foster grandparent volunteer within the school. And this helps students at their school stay on track. Any of these volunteer services are available at the Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging, and you may call 444-6536, area code 402. Again, these are volunteer programs available through the Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging.
Thank you very much, Jane. Let's now return for hour number 2 of the Lincoln Journal-Star and the
Okay.
Welcome back to our microphones. Here comes Bill Everhart and Lindsay Hawley.
Thank you. We're back. Here are the letters to the editor from the opinion page of the Journal Star. The first one they say that can't do conservatives. Conservatives are good at telling America what we can't do. We can't rebuild our infrastructure and create good jobs. We can't make post-secondary schooling free for all. We can't have universal health care. We can't provide drug treatment to addicts, nor can we house the homeless. We can't have a humane and fair system of justice. We can't protect our land and air and water. We can't have democracy in our workplaces. All of these, conservatives tell us we can't have. They just cost too darn much, or they're not consistent with American values. But then, what can America do, conservatives? Well, we can give tax breaks to the rich while taking health insurance away from millions of kids. We can wage endless wars. We can bail out fat cat bankers. We can imprison 2.5 million people. We can have a draft-dodging president who brags about groping women. We can't have the worst income inequality among all rich industrialized countries. These things we can afford, conservatives tell us. These things are consistent with American values, they say. If it were up to the conservative, we'd still be bowing to kings and belong to an established church. If it were up to the conservative, children would be working in factories instead of going to school, and our rivers would still be catching fire. If we leave it up to them now, they'll take us back and back and back, as close to serfdom as they can get. And that was contributed by Robert Underwood of Lincoln. The other one is Fortenberry plays hide and seek. Can I help you? A voice will ask behind a recently locked door at Representative Jeff Fortenberry's Lincoln offices. Yeah, it's deadbolt locked. If you simply state that you want to enter to express, say, your dissatisfaction with the new tax bill, they will ask you that you come in only 2 at a time. And this is in case you brought other concerned citizens, others who want to announce they too know this is really just a huge break for those in the huge tax break for those in the top 1%. So what are you doing, Fortenberry? It seems really guilty to me to be behaving in this way, hiding behind doors away from your middle class constituency and only allowing us lower classes to speak to you 2 at a time. But wait, they'll play fair. If you want to meet in a group, you can schedule an appointment. Perfect. However, when I call to actually make that appointment, I'm told, sorry, and there are just way too many groups that they have to speak with concerning this new tax bill. All right, I get the game. Fortenberry hide and seek. Is that what you're playing? Well, then this letter is my come out, wherever you are. I didn't know I had to play games with my representative in order to participate in my democracy. Contributed by Stephanie Barth of Lincoln. And here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. A 2018 prediction, more anxiety. It's the beginning of a new year and time to take annual stock of the past, present, and future. By almost any standard, 2017 was a tough 12 months for most Americans. We're stressed. The American Psychological Association's 2017 Annual Stress in America Survey reports that compared to last year, Americans are more likely to report symptoms of stress, which include anxiety, anger, and fatigue. In declining order, more than half are worried about the future of the nation, money, work, the current political climate, and violence and crime. We're pessimistic. Various polls tell us we have serious concerns about our future and our institutions. 60% believe that this is the lowest point in the nation's history they can remember. The country is on the wrong track, and our children's financial future will be worse than their parents. Fewer than 1/3 have confidence in our banks, big business, Congress, the criminal justice system, news sources, organized labor, and the presidency. We're not very happy, and getting less so. A Harris poll reports that only 1/3 of Americans say they are happy. A recent paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research says that the data shows, unambiguously, that Americans' evaluations of their own happiness has been falling in recent years. All economic groups, high school dropouts, high school graduates, college educated, are less happy now than they were in 1972. But pessimism should not completely rule the day. There are rays of hope. America and the world have made progress in important areas of social welfare. The economy is getting stronger and unemployment is low. Crime rates, including violent crimes, are down. High school and college graduations are up, and global poverty, hunger, and infant mortality are on the decline. Our situation may not be as bad as it appears. The annual Perils of Perception survey looks at the gap between people's perception and reality. On the Who's Most Wrong Index, we placed 35th out of 40 countries in 2016 and 16th in 2017. For example, this year, 79% of Americans believe that the murder rate was the same or higher than in 1995. And in fact, it has declined by 13%. And finally, the current negatives have an important silver lining. Discontent has driven us to be more involved with our democracy. Recent voter turnout is high. For example, the recent Alabama senatorial race had twice the projected turnout. We are increasingly acknowledging long-standing problem areas such as racial bias and sexual harassment and assault. And polls tell us that significantly more people are paying increased attention to politics. It is unlikely that 2018 will be very different from 2017. In fact, it is probable that anxiety and conflict will continue to dominate the foreseeable future. But as we face the challenges, we must remember that our voices make a difference, that facts are important, and that we firmly believe that America will be a nation where equality, justice, freedom, and compassion rule the day. And that was from the op-ed pages in the World Herald.
Oh, thank you. 11:16 is the time. Here is Leonard Pitts Jr.'s column, and he says, last political norms fell in 2017. It really wasn't all that bad. That, at least, was the consensus response from a dozen historians to whom Politico posed a question in the waning hours of the old year. Was 2017 the craziest year in U.S. political history? Only one answered in the affirmative. The rest deferred to years they considered crazier, including 1861, the year America went to war with itself over slavery, 1919, the year of the Red Summer race riots, and 1968, the year of the Democratic Convention riots and the MLK and RFK assassinations and the Tet Offensive. One historian, H.W. Brands of the University of Texas, said that compared to the first year of the Lincoln, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and both Bush presidencies, our first year under Trump was a yawner. I beg to differ. Granted, the question they were asked was so vague. How are we defining crazy after all? As to be in some sense unanswerable, and it's true enough that 2017 saw no major transformation or disruptive events on the scale of 1861 or even 1968. Still, I'd argue that in essentially writing it off as a so-called yawner, the panel underestimates 2017. Something did happen last year. It was easy to miss because it was not stark or spectacular. No riot, war, or secession. No, this was subtle and insidious, but all the more foreboding for that. 2017, you see, was the year the last norms fell. Those norms, for example, our sense of what is allowable and acceptable on the public stage, have been eroding for years, but in 2017 saw the process accelerate like Usain Bolt. It was the year things that are not supposed to happen happened all day, every day. A president just doesn't ridicule his own FBI and CIA, or interfere with the independent investigations, or bully the free press, or speak kindly of white supremacists and credibly accuse child molesters, or use his office for personal gain when everyone can see him doing it, or lie when even babies know he's lying. He doesn't threaten nuclear war via Twitter. A president simply doesn't do those things, except that now evidently he does, and that is scary. Politics and civil society as a whole rests on a foundation of largely unspoken agreements, a social covenant that defines us in relation to one another, sets forth the duties we owe and the expectations we maintain in deference to the larger of us. There have always been things our leaders did and refrained from doing, not necessarily because the doing or not doing violated the law, but because it violated tradition, propriety, common sense, ethics, statesmanship, the dignity of high office, and some native sense of right and wrong, all of which were conspicuously absent from the presidency last year. The result has been anger, coarseness, political destabilization, and a trickle-down nastiness visible both in anecdotes and in hate crime statistics. Nor is the source any mystery. As white fans jeered at players from a Black and Latino high school during a basketball game, Trump, Trump, Trump. Yes, 1919 brought riots and 2001 unspeakable terror, but 2017 was a sustained assault on the ideal of the larger of us. It taught us how fragile, is the social covenant. How susceptible to anyone willing to kick over the table, break the silverware, or beat his chest. It taught us how shamefully docile some of us will be in falling in line behind such an individual. Thankfully, it also taught us that civil society is not something you can take for granted. It's a choice you make, a thing you have to fight for, which will be a fitting mission for 2018 and beyond. 11:21. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And one more opinion from the World Herald. Congress must budget for inevitable wildfires. In a year of extraordinary natural disasters, from hurricanes to floods to wildfires, here's another record setter. Fiscal year 2017 was the U.S. Forest Service most expensive fire season yet. The cost of battling blaze after ever bigger blaze across the country topped $2.4 billion. Two decades ago, the cost of fighting fires consumed about 15% of the Forest Service budget. But increased development in and around undeveloped open spaces, along with, paradoxically, decades of fire suppression, mean that wildfires are growing larger, more intense, and more dangerous to communities. Many scientists believe that the warming climate is exacerbating the situation. As the cost of firefighting has gone up, the Forest Service budget has stayed relatively flat. The result is that fire suppression now consumes 55% of the agency's annual budget, and some officials estimate that it could grow to 2/3 in just a few years. And the problem is this. The Forest Service ends up hoarding the money intended for other forest management programs, including fire prevention, because officials know they're going to need it later in the year to fight fires. The agency has to shelve vital programs designed to reduce the threat of catastrophic blazes, such as thinning dense tree stands, control burns, or insect control. That makes no sense. It's far more expensive to fight fires and to rebuild after fires than it is to prevent them. By comparison, the government provides emergency money from a federal disaster fund to communities ravaged by hurricanes, tornadoes, and most other natural disasters. The good news is that there is bipartisan agreement that the federal government has to fix the way it pays for fighting wildfires. There are proposals in Congress to allow the Forest Service to tap emergency funds when it exceeds its firefighting budget. The bad news is that partisan ideological battles have, so far, stymied the needed changes. Republicans are pushing for legislation that would tie the budget fix to forest management proposals that would allow for more commercial logging on public land, while weakening environmental reviews and endangered species protections for such projects. This attack on environmental rules threatens to torpedo the real reforms needed for healthier forests. California has a lot riding on the budget fix, especially in the Sierra, where drought and bark beetle infestations have killed more than 100 million trees since 2010, according to the Forest Service. The Forest Service has tried to increase ecological thinning, which means cutting and removing some small and dead trees, and control burns to reduce the density of flammable material. But those are exactly the kinds of projects that are put on hold when the agency has to hoard money for firefighting. Congress must move forward with a bipartisan Forest Service budget fix. The longer it waits, the more fire prevention projects are delayed and the threat of more catastrophic fires grows. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Lindsay. Here is Ask Amy, and she says, sibling wants coming out guide for Modern Family. Dear Amy, earlier this year, my youngest brother came out. The fact that he is gay isn't exactly shocking, but it's something we are all still adjusting to. He is the youngest, so he is spoiled and acts very emotional when he doesn't get his way. Some months back, he informed me that he was seeing someone who is twice his age. I am uncomfortable with this, but have not addressed the subject with him. We're having a family gathering soon. My other brother will be bringing his girlfriend, so naturally, the younger brother insists that his boyfriend also be invited. I'm not comfortable with this. There's something very predatory about a 40-year-old man seeing a 20-year-old kid. Realistically, the chances of this relationship lasting are slim. My parents are afraid to say something to him about it because they're concerned it will push him away. The whole situation makes me dread going home. I don't want to be forced into an awkward situation. I don't understand how his being gay all of a sudden invalidates our feelings. We are instantly dubbed homophobic if we state that we want more time to process this. There isn't exactly a pamphlet on how to go from awkward to Modern Family status when a loved one comes out. I don't know if I should just keep my mouth shut and keep his visit very short, or if I should say something that will inevitably hurt his feelings. Your feedback? Signed, Redding. Dear Dreading, my first reaction is to wonder why you need so much time to process this simple and not shocking news, and why this makes you so uncomfortable. I don't want to label you as a homophobe, and yet you are filled with dread and anxiety about awkwardness of your brother's sexuality. You have an aversion to it. This seems fairly phobic to me. Our youngest brother, your youngest brother, might be spoiled, emotional, and dramatic, and perhaps that's what you are dreading. But his sexuality is really not up for dispute or discussion. You don't get to approve or disapprove. If a family member has a romantic partner, that seems unfit. The best thing to do is to meet that person. The only way to influence this young man is from inside the family fold. If I authored a pamphlet for going from awkward to modern family, it would really be a bumper sticker, grow up. And the next year, Amy, when my wife and I were first married, we would invite my parents to our home for Sunday dinner. On many occasions, my mother, who was an excellent cook, would bring pots of her cooking without asking to serve at the dinners. She told my wife to put away the food that she spent time preparing for another occasion and to use my mother's food instead. My wife felt that she was being belittled and unappreciated. She asked me on numerous occasions to ask my mother not to bring food without previously letting us know her intentions so that my wife would not work in vain. I did so reluctantly, but to no avail. What is the appropriate response to this situation? What is the correct and gracious thing to do? My thought process at the time was that it was more gracious with any guest to use the food that the guest prepared. My wife felt intimidated by her new mother-in-law, but I was remiss in not more forcefully communicating her wishes. What is the appropriate response in this situation? Signed, Hungry Husband, dear Hungry. It is not appropriate for a guest to bring an entree and insist that her dish must be served for dinner. You and your wife should have said to her, when we are invited to your house, we will happily eat delicious food you prepare for us. At our house, we'd like you to eat the food that we prepare. At the very least, please let us know your cooking plans in advance. This is an everybody loves Raymond dynamic. And just like in those long-running sitcoms, sometimes it's the wisest to basically give in. And the last, dear Amy, I'm writing in appreciation for your book on every bed. Book on Every Bed literacy campaign. My family started putting wrapped books on our kids' beds several years ago at your suggestion, and now this is a treasured family tradition. Signed, Happy Parents. Dear Happy, literacy starts with books and takes hold when books are shared. I am grateful to families who have adopted this tradition. 1128.
Thanks, Bill. And from the World Herald, brides see a new dress code for weddings. These days, wedding expert Alison Bliss says brides love to be different. They want to make their own story, said the store manager for Tip Top Tucks and Dream Dress Express, which means the days of wearing a traditional white dress are waning. For now. Instead, think glitz and glamour, says Stephanie Casera of Davis Bridal. That includes gowns of all hues and silhouettes of all types, from ball gowns to mermaid styles to cocktail lengths. At recent Bridal Fashion Week, shows, capes and jackets, detachable sleeves and feather accents have dominated the runways. Weddings are not cookie cutter anymore, Casera said. Not choosing white is one way to step outside the box. Casera isn't even bringing a white dress for Sunday's Wedding Essentials Bridal University runway shows at the Mid-America Center. The lightest is off-white, Casera said. Ivory, blush pink, champagne, and I'll do a grey one too. The color trend started a few years ago with champagne undertones and ivory lace, and it keeps expanding. Bliss said she's even had requests for black dresses, which are also trending nationally for 2018. Some are completely black, and others may be off-white with a black belt. Belted dresses are popular too. And Bliss said one of her designers also offers dresses in red, dark pink, and blue. Casera just pulled a dress of a client in a very light lilac with touches of blues and pinks and 3D butterfly appliques. It's beautiful, she said. Another dress in a rosewater hue is extremely popular, she said. Vintage lace and bell sleeves are in favor with Bliss's clients at Dream Dress Express, which features bohemian, modern contemporary styles and everything in between. Dresses are still fitted with perhaps a tulle overlay as well. Bliss will be bringing a large variety of dresses to the show, from fully beaded to light beachy styles in classic traditional looks. That classic look hasn't disappeared, it's just not always in white anymore. Structured fabrics such as satin can make the simplest style look amazing. A lot of dresses that are completely plain and simple make a statement on their own because they are so classic looking, Casera said. The bottom line, Bliss and Casera agree, is anything goes. Nobody wants to be seen in the same dress. The way it is in society, Casera said, everyone wants to be their own person. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you. Here is Ask the Doctors, and they say fermented kefir, that is spelled Kefir, I hope that's right, is the latest food fad. Dear doctor, is kefir really the miracle food that it's cracked up to be? I'll confess that fermented milk does not sound very appealing to me. What is it exactly, and how much should I consume a day? The reply, dear reader, if you've paid attention to food trends over the years, you've seen fads and enthusiasms come and go. This year's superfood becomes next year's shrug of the shoulder. Kale, kombucha, green tea, quinoa, acai berries, oatmeal, salmon, and even orange juice have each had their heyday in the headlines. Now it appears that kefir, a fermented drink traditionally made from the milk of cows, goats, or sheep, is having its moment. If you've never tried it, kefir is sometimes mildly effervescent, has a silky texture that is slightly thicker than milk, and has the sharp tang of plain yogurt. It is a good source of protein, calcium, and B vitamins, and delivers a generous dose of a range of gut-friendly bacteria. In time of intense interest in probiotics, it's this last quality that has helped propel kefir into the superfood category. Kefir comes and has long been part of the food tradition of Eastern Europe, Russia, and Southwest Asia. It is made by inoculating milk with a substance known as kefir grains. These kefir grains are made up of lactic acid bacteria and beneficial yeast that are held in a matrix of fats, sugars, and proteins. They form irregular clusters that can look a bit like cauliflower florets. The kefir grains break down the sugars in milk to form lactic acid, which imparts a sour flavor. It also renders kefir nearly lactose-free, which means that many people who can't tolerate milk, yogurt, or other dairy products will be able to consume kefir without physical consequences. For individuals who don't use milk, non-dairy versions of kefir made with coconut milk, coconut water, rice milk, and even fruit juices are available. However, these don't have the same amount of protein as a milk-based kefir and have a somewhat different probiotic profile. A number of health benefits are being attributed to the combination of probiotics, prebiotics, and beneficial yeasts that kefir contains. In addition to supporting a healthy gut, studies have found that kefir, which contains upward of 30 different strains of bacteria and yeasts, has anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Other studies have suggested that kefir can boost immune response and may even have anti-carcinogenic effects. It is important to note, however, that these are small studies with numerous caveats attached. Much more research is needed before making the leap from observation to medicinal claims. If you do decide to work kefir into your diet, be sure to read the nutrition labels. The flavor of plain kefir ranges from tart to mouth-puckering. As a result, many brands add sugar, fruit, and other flavorings to make it more palatable. Consider the fat, calories, and carbohydrates you'll be adding to your daily total and adjust accordingly. And as with any food, don't go overboard. Add kefir to your diet gradually and see how you feel. Here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. Great Scots abound throughout history by Cleveland Evans. Scott Frost, star quarterback of the 1997 Orange Bowl and national championship winning team, is the new Nebraska football coach. Jokes abound about how Frost, whose 43rd birthday is today, is already the most popular Nebraskan, months before he'll coach his first game. Scott is an English surname telling of one of Scottish ancestry. The Scots were Gaelic speakers from Ireland who founded the kingdom of Dalriata in western Scotland in the 6th century. In the 9th century, Dalriata merged with the Pictish kingdom of eastern Scotland to form the modern nation. Linguists aren't sure what Scot originally meant. The best guess is Pictish for carved, from the ancient Gaelic habit of tattooing with sharp knives. Many medieval Scots lived in northern England near the Scottish border, and there were also Scots in eastern England, where Scottish King David I sent settlers to estates he obtained by marrying Maud, the Countess of Huntingdon, in 1113. Some other English Scot families were originally Scut, from the Old French for spy, or Old English meaning hare, a fast runner. Surprisingly, Scot is also a common name and surname in Scotland. There it designated someone who still spoke Gaelic after many medieval Scots had become English speakers. Today, Scot is the 10th most common surname in Scotland and the 42nd most common in England. In 2010 United States Census, there were 439,530 Scots, making it the 39th most common family name. When the custom of turning surnames into boys' first names took off in the late 18th century, men with Scot as a first name appeared. Many had mothers whose maiden name was Scott, and others were named after Sir Walter Scott, 1771 to 1832, famous author of novels such as Rob Roy and Ivanhoe. An even bigger factor was Winfield Scott, 1786 to 1866, the most famous American general between the Revolution and the Civil War. He was wounded in the War of 1812 while leading troops to the Battle of Lundy's Lane in July 1814. Later in the Mexican-American War, he led the army capturing Mexico City in 1847. The Whigs nominated Winfield Scott as their presidential candidate in 1852. He lost narrowly to Franklin Pierce, serving general in American history, earning the nickname Grand Old Man of the Army. Retiring in 1861, he lived out his life at West Point. One boy named after him was Winfield Scott Hancock, 1824 to 1886. Inspired by his namesake, Hancock too became a general. His leadership at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863 earned him the nickname Hancock the Superb. He was nominated for president in 1880, losing to James Garfield. In the 1850 census, 1,883 men had Scott as a first or middle name, including 246 besides Hancock, with the combination Winfield Scott. In 1880, when Social Security's yearly baby data name started, Scott ranked 206th. The name receded along with the fame of the two Winfields, bottoming out at 493rd in 1930. Parents rediscovered Scott in the 1930s. The fame of writer F. Scott Fitzgerald was 1896 to 1940, as well as the film career of Randolph Scott, 1898 to 1987, may have helped, but there doesn't seem to have been any particular impetus other than it fit in with the other names and nicknames of the 1950s, such as Mark, Steve, Jeff, Mike, and Keith. Scott peaked at 11th in 1962. It receded a bit and then surged back to 10th in 1971. That may have been prompted by watching Scotty Grow. Bobby Goldsber's hit song topped the charts in January 1971. Its lyrics, in which a father fondly watches his young son play, made Scotty the perfect name for a boy. Scotty is an official formal name, boomed 95% that year to rank 210th, also its highest point ever. Scott stayed in the top 50 until 1989. Famous Scots born during the name's heyday include actors Scott Baio, 1960, Scott Bakula, 1954, Scott Kahn, 1976, and Scott Wolf in 1968. Simon of NPR, 1952, and Pelly of CBS, 1957, are famous journalists. Odell, 1898 to 1989, wrote the young adult classic Island of the Blue Dolphins. Scott Turow, 1949, writes best-selling legal thrillers, while Scott Lynch, 1978, and Scott Westerfield, 1963, are fantasy authors. Scott Adams, 1957, is the creator of the comic strip Dilbert. Figure skater Scott Hamilton, 1958, won Olympic gold in 1984. Ultramarathoner Scott Jurek, 1973, set the speed record for walking the Appalachian Trail in 2015. Nationally, Scott dipped to 465th in 2016, its lowest point since 1932. I won't be surprised, though, if it's more popular than that for Nebraska babies in 2018. Back to you, Bill.
1140. From the Journal Star and in business, Lincoln and Omaha have work-life balance. If you're looking to find balance between your personal life and your career, you would be hard-pressed to find a better place than Nebraska. Personal finance website Smart Asset ranked Lincoln #2 and Omaha #3 on its list of cities with the best work-life balance. Both cities scored well for having a relatively short commute, 18.9 minutes, while Lincoln also received high rankings for its low unemployment rate and relatively low housing costs. Madison, Wisconsin topped the list, with Lubbock, Texas coming in 4th and Columbus, Ohio 5th. And construction spending hits a record high from Washington. U.S. builders spent 0.8% more on construction projects in November, the 4th consecutive monthly gain. November advance follows October's revised 0.9% gain, the Commerce Department said Wednesday. The increase brought total construction spending for the month to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of $1.26 trillion, an all-time high. Private construction spending, which was up 1% from last month, also hit an all-time high. And a forecast calls for higher gas prices. The year is now 2018. If you add 18 and 20, you get 38. Half of 38 is 19. Why is this all important? Because that's the prediction for how much higher gas prices will be this year. Gas price tracking website GasBuddy on Wednesday released its forecast for 2018, and it predicts gas prices nationally will rise to an average of $2.57 a gallon, 19 cents higher than a year ago. That would be the highest average price since 2014. GasBuddy petroleum analyst Patrick DeHaan said it in a news release that a big reason prices are predicted to rise are moves by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And here's Lindsay.
Thanks, Bill. And from the World Herald Money, mergers and acquisitions so hot even Berkshire's billions fell short. There are a few things that better illustrate the banner year 2017 was for deals among North American power companies than this. Even billionaire Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway wasn't able to come away with a winning bid. The industry saw $68.2 billion of acquisitions in 2017, the most in a decade. According to data compiled by Bloomberg, with electricity prices low and profit margins tight, the buying spree is continuing into the new year, with Dominion Energy Incorporated announcing on Wednesday that it will buy Scanner Corporation, a utility battered by a failed nuclear project, for $7.9 billion in a stock-for-stock deal. It's a seller's market, said William Lamb, a partner at New York law firm Baker Botts, before the Dominion deal was announced. There just aren't that many companies out there to buy, so when things come onto market, buyers tend to be willing to reach. The Scanner transaction is valued at about $14.6 billion, including the assumption of debt, according to a statement Wednesday. It follows a 47% share decline for Scanner over the last year. Last year's top prize was Encore Electric Delivery Company, the biggest transmission line operator in Texas. It had drawn at least 4 suitors in recent years, including the Berkshire Energy unit run by Greg Abel. Abel made an all-cash bid valued at $18.2 billion, including the assumption of Encore debt, but the Sempra Energy offered $18.8 billion, and Abel declined to top it. The intense pursuit of Encore shows how determined companies are to acquire rivals and expand. One reason is that regulated utilities are under increasing pressure from shareholders to cut costs by consolidating, especially with interest rates still low enough to make borrowing money attractive. The industry has been hit hard by stagnant or declining electricity sales, and many face rising costs to replace aging infrastructure. At the same time, independent power producers are also struggling. They run plants that sell electricity into competitive wholesale markets where electricity prices have collapsed. That's mostly because of a flood of cheap natural gas being used as a fuel by more generators. Plus, about 70% of US power was expected to come from renewables like solar and wind in 2017, twice the market share of a decade earlier, government forecasts show. There is a continued belief in economies of scale, said Roger Wood, managing director at Moelis & Company, which has spent 3 decades as an investment banker and has advised on some major power deals. If you're larger, you could be more relevant to investors and better able to deliver good service to your customers. An expanded footprint was the goal for San Diego-based Sempra, which operates gas and electric distribution assets in places like California and Mexico, along with liquefied natural gas projects in Louisiana and Texas. In August, Sempra outbid Berkshire for Oncor to move into the Texas power market, which has been more robust because of population growth. That same month, Houston-based Calpine Corp, an independent power producer, agreed to be taken private by a group led by Energy Capital Partners for $17.1 billion in equity and debt. In October, Dingy and Vistra Energy, both in Texas, agreed to merge in a transaction valued at $10.5 billion. The combined company and NRG Energy would be the only publicly traded merchant power producers left. It's difficult to have a publicly traded independent power producer because of the focus on short-term earnings from a Wall Street point of view, said Matt Moran, an energy markets advisor at PA Consulting Group. With lower gas prices and renewables entering the market, that has made the earnings environment